The message arrived on a quiet Tuesday morning, slicing through Earth's communication networks like a blade through silk. At the Deep Space Monitoring Station in Chile, scientists were the first to detect it, a signal so powerful, so impossibly dense with data, that it shattered every known record of extraterrestrial contact. Within hours, every government had a copy. Within a day, the entire planet knew humanity was no longer alone. The transmission unfolded across every screen on Earth, translated instantly into every language by technology, so advanced it seemed supernatural. A holographic figure materialized, tall, elegant, with metallic silver skin that rippled like liquid mercury. Its eyes were vast and black, devoid of pupils, giving it an unearthly, unsettling grace. "I am Ambassador Theron, representative of the Galactic Council," the being declared, voice smooth and melodic, yet heavy with absolute authority. "Greetings, humans of Earth. We are the Galactic Council, guardians of 47 civilized species across this region of space. We have observed your kind for some time. You have advanced faster than expected, expanding to nearby worlds. This brings you to our attention." In Geneva, President Maria Santos of the United Earth Government watched the message in grim silence. Her hands were clenched so tightly that her knuckles turned white. Around her, generals, scientists, and advisors stood frozen, captivated, and terrified. Theron continued, his tone cooling with each word. "However, your development troubles us. You possess nuclear and biological weapons. You glorify war. Your history is written in blood. Such species must be guided before they become a danger to galactic peace." A gesture from the ambassador, and a glowing star map appeared. Earth and its colonies on Mars, Europa, and Titan encircled by hundreds of red markers, alien ships. "The Galactic Council extends this offer to all emerging civilizations," Theron said. "You have 30 standard cycles and roughly 30 of your Earth days to accept integration into our civilization. You will dismantle your militaries. You will surrender governmental authority to council advisors. You will be designated a Category 3 probationary species, with full citizenship granted once you prove yourselves civilized." President Santos felt her stomach drop. She glanced toward General James Morrison, head of the United Military Command. His face was expressionless, but she recognized the fury burning behind his eyes. "If you refuse," Theron added, his voice softening almost to pity, "the Council will be forced to integrate you by other means. We do not wish for violence, but we cannot allow a dangerous species to threaten galactic stability. Our peacekeeping fleets already surround your outer colonies. Choose wisely. Choose peace." The transmission ended. Silence followed, heavy, suffocating silence. For 3 days, the United Earth Government pursued diplomacy. Messages of peace, cultural exchange, cooperation, all sent into the void. None were answered. On the 4th day, a response arrived. Short, cold. "Your attempts at negotiation are noted but unnecessary. Accept integration or face consequences. You have 26 cycles remaining." Panic swept through global leadership. President Santos convened an emergency summit with every national leader. Debates exploded. Some argued for surrender, believing resistance would mean extinction. Others demanded defiance, unwilling to submit after centuries of struggle for freedom. A few sought a middle ground, acceptance on paper, rebellion in secret. Finally, General Morrison rose. His voice cut through the chaos like a thunderclap. "With all due respect, and they're not offering us peace. They're offering us slavery wrapped in diplomacy. Category 3 probationary species? That means no rights, no say, no freedom." Chancellor Wei of the Asian Federation countered. "General, their technology surpasses ours by centuries. Their fleets could burn our worlds to ash. How can we possibly fight them?" Morrison's lips twisted into a cold smile. "The same way our ancestors fought every empire that tried to conquer them, by being meaner, smarter, and more willing to bleed than anyone expects." The next morning, a diplomatic shuttle departed Mars base, carrying Earth's official delegation. The Galactic Council granted them permission to dock with their flagship, a colossal vessel so vast it possessed its own gravity. Inside a crystalline chamber of alien beauty, Ambassador Theron awaited them. Leading the human delegation was Dr. Sarah Okafor, a xenobiologist who had spent her life dreaming of first contact. Now that dream had become a nightmare. She bowed slightly. "Ambassador, we come seeking clarification on the terms of integration. Surely there is room for discussion. for compromise that honors both our species. Theron regarded her the way a teacher looks upon a naive student. Dr. Okafor, there is no negotiation. The Council has integrated 217 species over the past 3 millennia. The process is well established. You will find it quite painless, and if you cooperate, do not resist. The words hung in the air like a sentence. Dr. Sarah Okafor refused to back down. We're not here to threaten anyone, she said firmly. We simply ask to maintain our sovereignty, our right to govern ourselves. We can coexist peacefully without being forced into integration. Ambassador Theron tilted his silvered head, his alien features unreadable, yet somehow filled with quiet disappointment. Your species is young, he said softly. You cannot yet comprehend the danger you pose, to yourselves and to others. We have seen species like yours before. Left alone, they destroy themselves. Or worse, they become conquerors. The Council exists to prevent such tragedies. Dr. Okafor's voice barely rose above a whisper. And if we refuse? For a moment, Theron was silent. Then he gestured, and a massive view screen came alive, showing Mars suspended in the void, encircled by Council warships like a noose tightening around a throat. Then, he said calmly, we will act, and for your own good. Your Mars colony holds 80,000 souls. Such habitats are fragile. Accidents can happen to those who resist peace. A chill ran down Okafor's spine. The threat was unmistakable, delivered with the detached certainty of someone who had never been told no. She looked to her fellow diplomats and saw the same realization dawning in their eyes. For all their talk of enlightenment and peace, the Galactic Council were nothing more than bullies. Elegant, powerful bullies cloaked in the language of civilization. When the delegation returned to Earth, their faces told the story before their words did. There would be no compromise, no negotiation, only surrender or annihilation. That night, deep beneath Geneva, President Maria Santos convened an emergency meeting in a fortified bunker. Only her most trusted advisors were present. General James Morrison, Admiral Chen of the Space Defense Force, Dr. Okafor, and a dozen of Earth's brightest military and scientific minds. Options, Santos said quietly. General Morrison rose, activating a holographic map of the solar system. They have superior technology, superior numbers, and overwhelming firepower. In a direct fight, we'd last hours. Maybe less. He paused, a dangerous gleam in his eyes. So we don't fight them straight. We fight dirty. Explain, Santos said. For the next 4 hours, the bunker became a war room. Every detail of the Council's tactics, ship design, and communication protocols was dissected and analyzed. Slowly, patterns emerged. The Galactic Council fought wars like chess, precise, strategic, clean. Their battles were controlled, predictable. Their weapons were built for efficiency, not destruction. Their tactics assumed rational opponents, ones who surrendered when beaten. They've never faced anything like us, Morrison said grimly. They've never fought an enemy that breaks rules, that refuses to yield, that would rather burn everything than bow. As dawn broke over Geneva, President Santos stood, her face pale but resolute. She looked at the weary men and women around her, the last line between humanity and submission. Send the order, she said. All colonies, all defense stations, all military forces, prepare for conflict. We are not surrendering. Her voice hardened. When that deadline expires, we'll show the Galactic Council why you never corner a predator. Outside, the sun rose on Earth's final day of peace. High above, unseen in the morning sky, the Council's armada watched in silent confidence. They had done this countless times before. They expected panic. They expected fear. They expected submission. They had no idea what was coming. For over 3,000 years, the Galactic Council had existed without ever knowing true war. Not because they were saints, but because their very nature had never required it. Ambassador Theron belonged to the Velsharn, one of the Council's founding species. His people had evolved on vast, tranquil plains among gentle herbivores. They developed intelligence not through conflict, but cooperation, to herd, to predict weather, to build sprawling cities of harmony. Violence in their culture was seen not as a weapon but as a failure of understanding. The same was true for most Council races, species born on worlds where predators were small or extinct, where survival depended on empathy, not aggression. When they reached for the stars, they found others like themselves. And together they built the Council, A civilization shaped by logic, diplomacy, and control. Their wars were carefully managed. Ships fired warning shots. Sanctions crippled economies. At worst, precision orbital strikes neutralized military targets. Clean, bloodless, efficient. The concept of total war, of fighting until nothing remained, of choosing extinction over surrender was unthinkable. Until humanity. In a heavily fortified complex beneath the Rocky Mountains, General Morrison addressed the gathered elite of Earth's unified military command. Behind him, massive screens displayed the timeline of human conflict, from ancient wars fought with swords and fire to the nuclear standoffs of the 21st century. "Ladies and gentlemen," he began, voice steady, commanding, "what you see behind me is our greatest weapon, our history." He pointed to the archive of battles flickering across the screens. "The Council thinks we're primitives with crude weapons. They're right about the weapons, but they're dead wrong about us." A grim smile crossed his face. "We've spent 10,000 years perfecting the art of killing. Every empire that thought us weak learned the same lesson. Humanity doesn't bow. We bite." He turned to an image of a Council flagship. Sleek and elegant, all curves and glowing energy fields. "Look at their ships and no armor, all energy shields. Their plasma cannons and particle beams are powerful, but predictable. They've been fighting the same kind of wars for centuries because it's always worked." Admiral Chen, gray-haired and sharp-eyed, stepped forward. She had witnessed humanity's first leap into space decades earlier. "We've analyzed their battle formations," she said. "Every engagement follows the same doctrine. Formation lines, controlled fire patterns, minimal collateral damage. They fight like mathematicians." She glanced at Morrison. "They have no idea what happens when the math stops working. Exchange fire at medium range. Wait for shields to fail. Demand surrender." Admiral Chen said it aloud, studying the holographic simulation of a typical Galactic Council engagement. "It's ritualized," she muttered. "Predictable, civilized." General Morrison gave a dark grin. "We're not civilized, not by their standards. And that's exactly what's going to save us." Over the next 3 weeks, Earth became something the Council had never encountered. Not a fortress of steel and order, but of chaos and cunning. Every ounce of human ingenuity, born from millennia of war, desperation, and survival, was unleashed. On Luna, the old mining base, once meant for science and research, became the heart of Earth's hidden arsenal. Engineers worked in silence and exhaustion, converting mining mass drivers into makeshift rail cannons. Once used to launch ore containers toward Earth, they were now calibrated to hurl tungsten slugs at a fraction of light speed. To the Council's sensors, it looked like evacuation activity, a routine, harmless. They couldn't have been more wrong. In the asteroid belt, miners who had once dug for nickel and platinum now prepared for guerrilla war. Their small, agile ships, built for maneuvering through tight rock fields, were fitted with salvaged weapons, improvised explosives, and suicidal resolve. They weren't warships. They were civilian crafts turned into bombs. And that was the point. To Council scanners, they were invisible, harmless beneath notice. Meanwhile, on Earth, chaos was engineered by design. Factories that once produced cars now rolled out missiles. Fertilizer plants brewed explosives. Cyber specialists, hackers, and data scientists were quietly drafted into a new kind of war. One fought in code and signal. Their orders were simple but terrifying. Break into the Council's network, blind them, confuse them, tear their empire apart from within. Dr. Sarah Okafor found herself leading an unlikely team: xenobiologists, psychologists, and cultural theorists, all focused on one question: how do you terrify an enemy that's never known fear? In a meeting with the Joint Chiefs, she stood before a wall of alien behavioral data. The Council species evolved as prey, she explained. Their fear response is to freeze or flee, never fight. They've never encountered a predator that reached the stars. Admiral Chen leaned forward. Can we use that? Okafor's answer was immediate. Absolutely. Their doctrine assumes logic, predictability, order. If we show them chaos and if we act irrationally, their structure collapses. Panic will spread because fear is coded into their DNA. In a dim lab under London, a young programmer named Marcus Webb made a discovery that changed everything. He was analyzing the Council's communication protocols when he suddenly burst into laughter, startling everyone around him. They have no real security, he shouted. Their encryption is meant to prevent accidents, not attacks. They've never had to defend against hackers because no one's ever tried. It's like they left every door unlocked because they've never been robbed. Within days, Marcus and his team built an arsenal of digital weapons, viruses, worms, Trojans, each designed to exploit the Council's blind trust. They couldn't destroy ships directly, but they could do something far more devastating. Turn the enemy's technology against itself. Earth was preparing to teach the Council a brutal lesson, that in war, information is the first to die. As the deadline approached, the Council fleet around Mars grew self-assured. Their long-range scans showed Earth's fleets mobilizing, but the readings didn't worry them. A few dozen primitive ships, some orbital defense platforms, fragmented formations, nothing that looked remotely threatening. Ambassador Theron reviewed the reports with detached satisfaction. They will resist briefly, he told his aides. It is natural for young species to test their strength before submitting. We will disable their weapons, destroy 1 or 2 ships to demonstrate superiority, and then they will surrender. Within a week, Earth will begin integration. His tactical officer, a young strategist named Kale, frowned. Ambassador, some of their vessel movements seem irregular. They're not forming defensive lines or maintaining standard spacing. Theron waved a hand dismissively. They are amateurs, Kale. Do not expect them to understand proper military order. They will learn. He smiled faintly, confident. From us. But what the Council couldn't comprehend, what their perfect logic could never predict, was that chaos itself was a weapon. Those erratic maneuvers weren't mistakes. They were strategy. Humanity had learned long ago that unpredictability meant survival. You couldn't be targeted if your enemy couldn't anticipate your next move. You couldn't be conquered if your actions made no sense to a logical mind. And now the species that had once hunted mammoths with sharpened sticks was turning that same instinct toward an empire of the stars. At midnight, Greenwich Mean Time, President Santos gave the order. All forces, she said into the encrypted channel. This is Alpha Protocol. Execute when ready. Across the solar system, the command echoed. The Council fleet began its approach toward Earth, 300 warships, gliding in flawless formation. They had crushed rebellions, pacified worlds, and enforced peace for 3 millennia. To them, this was routine, a necessary correction of an unruly child. They expected primitive missiles, lasers, maybe a desperate frontal assault. What they got instead would echo across the galaxy for centuries. Deep beneath Geneva, Admiral Chen stood in the command bunker, watching the tactical feed. Her officers were silent, waiting for the signal. She thought of her daughter, stationed on one of the orbital defense platforms. She thought of her parents, who had once dreamed of peace among the stars. And she thought of humanity itself, a species born in fire, tested by extinction, defined by defiance. Let's remind them, she said quietly, what predators look like. Outside, far above the clouds, the war for Earth began. Humanity had a long, blood-soaked history of survival, of clawing victory from the jaws of extinction. Gentlemen, Admiral Chen said softly, her voice echoing through every ship, every base, every soldier preparing for the final stand. We didn't come this far as a species by surrendering when the odds were against us. Our ancestors fought with rocks and sticks, then with swords and shields, with muskets, cannons, and finally nuclear fire. Today we fight with everything we have, and we show these aliens what happens when you corner a predator. She paused for a heartbeat, a grim smile touching her lips. Light them up. Across the solar system, from Luna to the asteroid, belt to the hidden defense, stations orbiting Jupiter, human, weapons came online. The trap was set. The prey had grown fangs, and the Galactic Council was about to learn a lesson written in blood and fire. The Council fleet entered Earth's defense perimeter with unshakable confidence. 300 warships in perfect formation, advanced at mathematically precise speeds. Their shields shimmered, weapons armed, crews calm and efficient. They had never known defeat. Ambassador Theron stood on the bridge of his flagship, admiring the distant blue-green world growing in the view screen. It looked peaceful, serene. Soon it would be another jewel of the Council's civilized order. Distance to Luna? He asked. Approaching optimal range, replied his navigation officer. Recommend we begin with a controlled strike on their lunar base. Ambassador, a demonstration. No casualties if possible. Theron nodded. Make it so. We are teachers, not conquerors. That was when the moon opened fire. From Luna's surface, massive railguns disguised as mining equipment roared to life. Tungsten rods, each weighing several tons, accelerated to nearly 1/3 the speed of light. They reached the Council fleet in seconds. There was no warning. No time to react. The first projectile struck the Valerium-class cruiser Peaceful Dawn. The Council's energy shields, designed to deflect plasma and laser fire, were useless against pure kinetic force. The tungsten rod punched through the ship's hull, tearing through compartments and reactors before erupting out the other side. The cruiser exploded, split in half, and vanished in a blinding flash. 43 crew members died instantly. It was the Council's first combat death in over a century. 20 more rods followed. The Council ships tried evasive maneuvers, but their rigid doctrines had no response for this. They were built to fight predictable wars. These were chunks of metal obeying only physics, invisible to sensors, unstoppable by shields. 5 ships were vaporized in the first salvo. 7 more were crippled. "Scatter formation. Return fire," Theron shouted, his calm shattered. But scattering broke their precious formation. Confusion rippled through the fleet as ships moved into each other's firing lines. Coordination collapsed just as the second wave began. From the asteroid belt, dozens of small ragtag ships appeared. They looked like miners' vessels because they were crude, patched together, bristling with improvised weapons. They flew like madmen. No formation, no pattern, just chaos. Council targeting AIs couldn't predict their movements. Their algorithms broke under the randomness. The human pilots weren't following orders, they were following instincts born of generations, working in deep space, dodging asteroids and death. One mining vessel, piloted by Rosa Martinez, an ice hauler, with 30 years of experience, aimed her ship straight at a Council frigate. Her comms were open. "This is for Earth, you arrogant bastards." Her ship, packed with explosives, hit the frigate at full burn. The blast tore through the alien ship like paper. Rosa died instantly, along with 97 Council crew members. It was the first suicide attack the Council had ever faced. They had no concept of it, no defense, no understanding. Why would anyone choose to die to destroy an enemy? They didn't understand humanity. They didn't know about kamikaze pilots, about soldiers making last stands, about sacrifice burned into human history. Humanity had survived for 10,000 years on courage and desperation. And now, that ancient instinct was unleashed on the stars. More miners followed Rosa's example. Not all hit their targets, but enough did. The Council fleet was reeling, ships burning, formations broken, commanders shouting conflicting orders. And that was when the cyber attack struck. Marcus Webb and his team had been waiting for this exact moment. The Council ships were interconnected, built to function as one synchronized network, sharing sensor data and firing solutions. That unity was now their downfall. The virus spread like wildfire. Comms went dark. Targeting systems lied. Sensor data scrambled. The mighty Council fleet, once a flawless machine, was now fighting blind, deaf, and paralyzed. Navigation systems flickered with corrupted data. Some Council ships believed they were safely docked back at home ports. Others thought they were alone in the endless dark, surrounded by nothing. What had once been a perfectly synchronized fleet was now a confused mob of isolated vessels, each blind, each terrified. From her command center beneath Geneva, Admiral Chen watched it unfold exactly as she had planned. "Launch all fighters," she ordered. Wings 1 through 9 engage at will. Earth's fighters were crude by Council standards, small, underpowered, and barely capable of breaking orbit. But what they lacked in technology, they made up for in agility. And in pilots. These weren't just soldiers, they were gamers, racers, simulation addicts raised on virtual dogfights and impossible missions. To them, space combat wasn't alien, it was instinct. They swarmed the Council fleet like a storm of angry hornets. Too many to track, too fast to target. Their railguns and missiles tore into alien hulls. When ammunition ran dry, some pilots made the ultimate choice, turning their craft into kinetic weapons. One fighter slammed into a cruiser's bridge, shattering its command deck. The pilot's final scream of defiance echoed across every open frequency. On his flagship, Ambassador Theron stared at the chaos in disbelief. This wasn't war. This was madness. This is insanity, he shouted, his voice cracking. His tactical officer lay dead, Beside him, killed when that human fighter had plowed through the view screen moments earlier. Pull back! Theron screamed into the failing comm system. All ships retreat. Immediate withdrawal. But retreating was impossible. The Council fleet, built for disciplined maneuvers, was now a panicked herd. Ships collided, weapons misfired, allies accidentally fired on each other in the confusion. Humanity's forces pressed the attack, relentless and merciless like wolves tearing into wounded prey. Among the chaos, a lone destroyer, the ESS Prometheus, drifted, battered and burning. Its captain, David Chen, nephew of Admiral Chen, stared at the flickering readouts. His ship was dying, half his crew already gone, reactor critical. He knew what came next. "This is Destroyer Prometheus," he broadcast across all frequencies. His voice was calm, steady. "Earth remembers. Earth fights back. And Earth never surrenders." He pushed the throttle to full. The Prometheus surged forward, colliding with a massive Council carrier. The reactor went critical on impact. From Earth's surface, the explosion was visible as a new star blinking into existence. A flash brighter than dawn. The carrier and its escorts were vaporized. David Chen and his 47 surviving crew became legends, the first martyrs of a new age. The Battle of Luna lasted just 4 hours. When it ended, the Council fleet was shattered. 119 ships destroyed, 68 crippled beyond repair, thousands dead or missing. The survivors fled in panic, jumping to hyperspace as soon as their systems could calculate escape coordinates, abandoning the crippled vessels drifting in the void. Earth's victory came at a heavy cost. Luna's railguns were gone. 37 fighters never returned. 4 defense platforms were lost and thousands of humans lay dead. But they had won. Against impossible odds, humanity had stood toe-to-toe with the most powerful empire in the galaxy and sent it running. Inside the command bunker, Admiral Chen stood among exhausted officers and smoldering consoles. Reports streamed in, casualties, damage, ammunition counts, but celebration could wait. President Santos appeared on the main display from Geneva. Her face was pale, aged by stress. "Admiral, you did it," she said softly. "You stopped them for now." Chen exhaled, her shoulders heavy. "They'll be back. Next time they'll come prepared. We hurt them, but we didn't break them. Then we prepare for round 2, Santos said firmly. And we make sure they never forget one thing." She leaned closer to the camera. "Earth doesn't kneel. Not to anyone." Across Council space, the news spread like wildfire. For 3,000 years, the Galactic Council had ruled uncontested, untouched by rebellion or defeat. Now one small primitive world had shattered that illusion. Some species reacted with horror, others with fear. But a few, those long oppressed under Council, dominance, felt something ancient and powerful rise within them. Hope. Aboard his crippled flagship, Ambassador Theron sent a final transmission back to Council Command. His voice trembled. His arrogance was gone. "Council Command, this is Ambassador Theron. Earth has refused integration. They fought back. They used weapons we didn't anticipate, tactics we couldn't counter. They killed our people deliberately, willingly. They sacrificed themselves just to destroy us." He paused. When he spoke again, his voice carried something the Council had never heard from one of their own before. "Fear. They're not like us. They're predators. Real predators. And they're not going to stop." The Galactic Council chamber on Thalassar, its marble dome a monument to 10 centuries of order, had never been so silent. Representatives from 47 species filled the vast hall, their voices hushed, their fear barely hidden. At the central podium, High Counselor Mythos, the ancient Velsharn who had led the Council for 30 years, stood pale and trembling. "The human question," he declared, his voice echoing through the chamber, "must be resolved. We have suffered the greatest military defeat in 3,000 years. For 3,000 years, the Council had never tasted true defeat. Now the tally read like a wound that wouldn't heal. 119 ships lost, over 4,000 crew dead. "This cannot stand," High Counselor Mythos declared. A Krenthar representative rose, a hulking reptilian hunter named Saroth. The Krenthar had long been used by the Council as enforcers, predators whose aggression was channeled into security duties. Saroth's scales glittered as he spoke, and there was an odd thrill in his voice. "With respect, High Counselor," he said, "we did not suffer merely a defeat. We were taught a lesson. The humans fought like warriors, not diplomats. Perhaps we should learn from them rather than destroy them. Outrage swelled through the chamber. Solara, the Velsharn delegate, trembled with fury. Learn from them? They murdered our people. They employ suicide attacks, weapons made to kill, tactics without honor. They are barbarians. Sarath's reply was blunt. They are survivors. They reminded us that we have grown complacent in our superiority. The universe is not kind to the weak. The debate tore on for hours. Some delegates demanded immediate retribution, an armada to crush Earth by sheer overwhelming force. Others counseled caution. Now that humans had shown cunning, perhaps negotiation could still be useful. A small faction led by the Krenthar and a few others openly admired humanity's ruthless efficiency. At last, Mithas slammed his gavel. Decision made. Assemble a great armada, 3,000 ships drawn from 12 member species. We will not repeat our mistakes. We will strike with overwhelming force, destroy Earth's military capacity from safe distance, then integrate their world properly. Defiance will meet annihilation. The vote was nearly unanimous. Only the Krenthar abstained. The Great Armada began to mobilize, and the largest war fleet the Council had mustered in 5 centuries. It would take months to form, but once assembled, Council Command believed Earth would have no choice but to surrender. They were wrong. On Earth, victory had not softened resolve, it hardened it. Admiral Chen, now the public face of humanity's defense, was lauded everywhere, but she knew the truth. Their Luna triumph had been bought with surprise and desperation. They won't be surprised twice, she told the High Command. We can't beat them in a straight fight. Their tech and numbers still dwarf ours. If we wait for them to return, we die. General Morrison nodded. Then we don't wait. We take the war to them. The plan was audacious, bordering on madness. Rather than cower behind Earth, humanity would go offensive, strike Council supply lines, sabotage shipyards, hit logistics hubs, and force the Council to bleed for every light year. Above all, they'd fracture the Council's greatest strength, unity. Dr. Sarah Okafor had been mining data recovered from damaged Council wrecks. The spoils of battle revealed an uncomfortable truth. The Council was held together more by enforcement than by consent. Scores of member worlds had been absorbed against their will. Cultures eroded, laws imposed. Some of those species will resist the Council. If they believe they have a chance, she told President Santos, we can give them hope. You mean start a revolution? Santos asked. I mean show them resistance is possible, Okafor replied. Give them someone to follow. 3 weeks after Luna, Earth launched its first strike force into Council space. 5 ships, the sum of what Earth could spare. Using captured nav data and stolen jump coordinates, they slipped into the Kelvar system, a logistics hub feeding Council operations across 3 sectors. Captain Jessica Reeves commanded the corvette Defiant. She was 32, a veteran of asteroid belt skirmishes, her hand still small on the throttle. Jump complete, her navigator said. Kelvar ahead. Multiple contacts. Military infrastructure? Negative, replied the sensor officer. Civilian freighters, automated platforms, a dozen security drones. Light defenses. Relief washed over Reeves. This was the kind of target they could justify. All ships execute attack profile. Fast in, fast out. Maximum damage. They hit like a storm. Missiles and railgun volleys shredded storage platforms, ruptured fuel depots, and crippled supply freighters. Security drones tried to respond, but overwhelmed in minutes. The raid lasted under 20 minutes. The damage lasted far longer. Before jumping out, Reeves broadcast a message that Dr. Okafor had crafted and translated into the Council's major tongues. It went out across all open frequencies, aimed at every world within listening range. This is Earth. We were told to surrender, to accept integration and lose our freedom. We refused. We fought, we won. If we can resist the Council, so can you. You are not alone. The message spread like wildfire. Within days, other human strike teams hit targets across a dozen systems. Each broadcast varied in tone and form. Recordings of survivors, intercepted orders, raw footage of Council atrocities. But the theme was the same. Resistance is possible. Across Council space, the effect was immediate and destabilizing. Worlds that had only ever known the Council's rule began to whisper. Smug officials found once quiet populations asking dangerous questions. Small mutinies and covert sabotage occurred in far-flung ports. In some systems, local militias dusted off old grievances and prepared for a fight. The Great Armada would still come. It would still be terrible. But now the Council had to face a new reality. Earth had not merely struck blows, it had opened cracks in the Empire's foundation. And where cracks appear, revolutions can follow. The core of the Council remained intact, but everything had changed. Earth was fighting back and winning. The effect on Council morale was devastating. Ships that had been preparing to join the Great Armada began reporting sudden mechanical failures. Crew members deserted. Entire delegations started to ask whether crushing Earth was really justified. The Velsharn delegation tried to suppress the human broadcasts. But information was a force of its own across an interconnected civilization of dozens of worlds. Once the truth leaked, it spread too quickly to control. Humanity escalated. The Kresh shipyards in the Talmor system, orbiting a gas giant and producing half of the Council's frigate class, warships were reputed untouchable. Heavily defended and fed by deep logistics, they were considered sacrosanct. Commander Sarah Okafor, who had taken up a combat role after Luna, volunteered to strike them. Her ship, Prometheus II, named to honor David Chen's sacrifice, jumped into Talmor alone. Alarms screamed across defensive arrays. Dozens of Council vessels rushed to intercept. Sarah had minutes, maybe 15, before they overwhelmed her. It was enough. She held course for the largest construction platform, pushed the reactor into the red and bore down. Council batteries shredded her shields and tore gashes through the hull. Crew died one by one under fire. Shrapnel and flames lanced through compartments. Still she flew, ignoring searing pain, eyes locked on the platform that grew huge in her view screen. Her last transmission was simple. Earth remembers. Prometheus II struck the platform at nearly 10% of light speed. The impact vaporized the construction hub. 4 new warships under assembly were destroyed. 2 adjacent platforms were crippled by the shockwave. The Kresh yards, a jewel of Council industry, had been wrecked and would take years to rebuild. Sarah Okafor's sacrifice did more than damage infrastructure. It reverberated across the galaxy. Humans would go anywhere, pay any price to defend their freedom. There was no safe rear. If the Council invaded Earth, Earth could reach them. The psychological toll was immediate. Voices in the Council chamber shifted. The peaceful Velsharn protested the war as immoral. Even some Velsharn began to question whether integrating such a volatile species was worth the cost. Younger and subjugated worlds, ones absorbed into the Council in living memory, started to rebel. The Corallians, integrated only decades earlier, struck first. Attacks on Council military bases in their home star system, broadcasting Earth's messages of resistance alongside their own. The Council crushed the Corallian uprising brutally, but the image of benevolent integration had been shattered. Observers on other worlds asked, if the Council kills the Corallians for seeking freedom, what then is integration but enforced subjugation? High Counselor. Mythos watched his perfect order fray and felt something unfamiliar. Helplessness. Earth had done more than win a battle. It exposed the Council's core lie, that their rule was consensual. It was not. It was dominance dressed as enlightenment. As the Great Armada assembled, in the Thalassar system 3,000 ships from a dozen species, a force that could pulverize planets, as the Council believed itself ready to end the threat. Each vessel was a technical masterpiece, a monument to their supremacy. Mythos stood on the observation deck of the super dreadnought Unity, confident that sheer scale would cow any defiance, but doubt had crept in. In the 4 months since Luna, humans had launched 17 significant strikes across Council space. They had wrecked yards, supply hubs, and comm arrays. More dangerous, they had inspired uprisings among junior Council species. The Corallians had been suppressed, but the Valkyrie and Tresh still fought. For the first time in centuries, the Council faced war on multiple fronts. Kale, promoted to tactical advisor after his earlier misreadings turned to insight, approached Mythos with a datapad, his face tight. High Counselor intercepts show humans planning something major. Target Thalassar itself. Mythos read and paled. Impossible, insane. And that's what we said about Luna. Kyle replied quietly. And yet they won. Humans do not think like us. For them, striking the enemy's heart when outnumbered isn't madness, it's doctrine. Back on Earth, Admiral Chen finalized Operation Prometheus. a name now synonymous with willing sacrifice for a larger cause. This mission would be the boldest yet. 12 ships would run deep into Council space. It was a suicide force by every calculation. General Morrison studied the deployment grim. "We'll lose them all." "I know," Chen answered, voice low and steady. "But we don't need to win every battle. We need to make a noise so deafening that the Council has to listen. We need to prove nowhere is safe." And so, with the Armada gathering like a storm at Thalassar and human strike forces, becoming ever more daring, the war spread from pitched battles into politics and insurgency. The Council's core had been cracked, and the pieces were beginning to fall toward revolution. No place was safe. No show of force would make humanity kneel. President Santos joined the command room by hologram, every line on her face sharpened by months of war. "Admiral, are you sure about this?" she asked. The weight of possible civilian deaths hung between them. "We're targeting military and government hubs only," Admiral Chen answered. "No civilian centers, no genocide. We're not monsters, even if they call us that. But there will be collateral damage. That's the bitter truth of war." Santos fell silent for a long moment. "I never wanted this. First contact was meant to be our greatest hour, not our darkest." "No," Chen said, voice steady. "Our darkest hour would have been surrender. This is who we are showing the galaxy to be. We don't quit." 12 ships launched under Operation Prometheus, leaping separately to reduce detection. Every crew knew they were on a one-way run. Young pilots fresh from simulator bays flew beside veterans stained by Luna's fires. All volunteers, all certain Earth would not bow. Commander James Park led from the cruiser Indomitable. He was 47, a husband and father, haunted by a brother who died at Luna. "Final jump in 30, his comm officer said. Park looked at the faces around him. "Whatever happens in the next hour, know this. Earth is proud of you. Humanity is proud of you. We're about to do something they will tell their children about for 1,000 years. Jump, 3, 2, 1. They appeared above Thalassar, the Council's heart, like ghosts in the sky. Alerts screamed across the planet. Defense platforms roared to life. Ships scrambled for intercept. For a few priceless seconds, surprise was theirs. "Target the largest military orbital station," Park ordered. "Weapons free. Hit hard, hit fast." Battle erupted in a torrent of noise and light. Human vessels darted unpredictably, firing at anything military while broadcasting, defiant messages on every open frequency. Council ships, packed too densely in the Armada, collided, blinded by their own cluttered formations. The supposed strength of 3,000 vessels became a liability. Congestion, confusion, and catastrophic friendly fire. One human ship, the Vengeance under Lee, Wait, who had lost her family to a strike on Mars, limped in with shields. Down and hull breached. "This is for Mars," she whispered and drove into a government complex. The blast destroyed archives, records, and scores of bureaucrats. For the first time in a millennium, violence had touched the Council's homeworld. The strike lasted 38 minutes. All 12 human ships were lost. 462 souls died, but the toll on the Council was severe. 17 ships destroyed outright, 40 damaged, 3 major installations gone, and more than 1,000 Council personnel dead. More than the destruction, the attack cracked a myth. The people of Thalassar, long safe behind the Council's power, watched their sky burn. Fear reached homes and marketplaces. The illusion of invulnerability shattered. On the Unity, High Counselor Mithas watched the reports with a hollowing face. "They attacked our world," he murmured, disbelief and fury tangled together. "No," his aide countered softly, eyes on the tactical feed. "They made sure the war can never end unless we change what we are willing to become." Mithas convened an emergency council session, not to plot immediate vengeance, but to do something the council had never done in 3,000 years. Admit error. Standing before the assembled representatives, he spoke with a voice heavy with consequence. "We cannot win this war without becoming the monsters we denounce," he said. "The humans will not surrender. They will fight to the last breath, and they will take us with them. We have 2 choices. We can raise Earth and risk annihilation across systems, or we can change course, accept that our methods have betrayed our ideals and seek another path." The chamber sat in stunned silence. For a civilization built on certainty, the possibility that their dominance might mean doom was unbearable. Mithas' decision, born of fear, calculation, and something like shame, would define the Council's next move. The Empire could double down on destruction, or it could try to repair the moral fracture its policies had caused. The choice before the Council was brutal and absolute: raise Earth to ash and commit genocide, or open negotiations. The chamber erupted. Voices rose, some demanding total war, others begging for restraint. Hours of furious debate followed until Kale stood and spoke, calm but hard as steel. "I fought at Luna. I studied their tactics. I read their history," he said. "Humans are survivors from a world that tried to kill them for millennia. They did not evolve toward cooperation like we did. They evolved through competition, hunting, and war. They reached the stars by fighting, not by bargaining. They are everything we are not." He let the words hang in the vaulted hall, then finished with a thought that cut through the anger. "And that is exactly why we need them. Out beyond our charts there are threats we have never imagined. Predators who will not care for our civility or our laws. When that day comes, we will need warriors. We will need humans." The motion was controversial and the vote razor close, but it passed. The Council would offer negotiation. Earth would be dealt with as an equal, not as a subject to be absorbed. The peace talks took place on a neutral station, halfway between Earth and Council. Space Admiral Chen led the human delegation, flanked by President Santos and the sister of Dr. Sarah, Okafor carrying the weight of her legacy. Kale represented the Council in person while High Counselor Mythos observed remotely. Tension crackled through every session. Earth's demands were simple and absolute: full sovereignty, an independent military, and a seat at the Council with voting rights. The Council staggered at such terms. Chen was unsparing. "We've shown we can hurt you," she said bluntly in one session. "We've shown we will not stop. You can accept us as enemies who will fight you forever, or you can accept us as partners who stand with you. Choose." After 3 weeks of negotiation, a treaty was signed on June 15th, Earth calendar, 6 months after first contact. The term stunned many. Earth would join the Galactic Council as a full member species, not an integrated subject. They retained their government and their armed forces. In exchange, Earth agreed to share selected technologies and to provide military advisory support to Council forces. The clause that surprised everyone came from Kale. Human advisors would be invited to train Council units, not to make them killers, but to teach survival against predators. Chen's reply was a grim smile. "You want us to teach you how to fight?" Kyle corrected gently. "We want you to teach us how to win." The treaty sparked parades and memorials on Earth and mixed reactions across Council space. Some celebrated a new era. Others seethed with unease. Yet the galaxy had changed irreversibly. 5 years later, when an extragalactic threat called the Vex appeared on the edge of Council space, it was human tactical doctrine that turned the tide. Admiral Chen, now Supreme Commander of Combined Council Forces, led a multicultural fleet of ships from 47 species. Using the very tactics the Council had once dismissed as barbaric, they fought the Vex to a standstill, proving that the uneasy bargain had saved more than one world. It had saved civilization itself.